Welcome to a third season of $100 plus mileage. New Hampshire legislators are back in Concord for 2023, and we're back to talk to you about some of the roughly 1,000 bills they'll be voting on.
Actually, right now, it looks like there will only be about 900 bills this year. I think the incoming legislators saw how closely the House would be divided, and they decided not to bother with some of their more controversial ideas.
What, no flamethrowers, weather experiments, or hot dog topping bills this year?
Oh, don't worry. There's still plenty of gems to dig into, like a bill requiring legislators to be paid in silver coins.
Oh, okay. That's good. All right. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. If you're a new listener, welcome. I'm Mike Dunbar, content editor for Citizens Count.
And I'm Anna Brown, director of research and analysis for Citizens Count. There are a lot of new 2023 bills we could talk about in our first episode of this year, but as I've been reading through these bills, I was struck by how many are repeats from previous years.
So you're saying legislators can just reintroduce bills as many times as they want?
Sort of. There's a House rule that prevents legislators from introducing a bill that is, quote unquote, substantially similar to a bill that was killed in the previous year, but that only applies for the second year of a legislative session. So in other words, the clock resets after every general election, and our state representatives can resurrect any topic they want. Sometimes they refine a bill based on feedback, but sometimes the text is identical. After a quick glance, it looks like about 1/3 of the bills we talked about on the podcast last year are back this year in some version or another. So that includes ranked choice voting, a ban on cat declawing, discrimination protections for people without housing vouchers, scuba diving for lobsters, hourly working limits for teenagers, and a whole lot more.
Okay, so you're thinking we should do a clip show of past episodes, perhaps?
No, as much as I love the Seinfeld clip show, we're not going to use that model. I want to tell listeners about 3 big bills that they may want to follow in the coming months because they're really important issues that came up last year, and I think the public might want to weigh in this year.
All right, let's do it.
Up first, a Parent Bill of Rights.
I remember this from last year. It covers everything from a parent's right to direct the education and care of his or her minor child to criminal penalties for violating the law.
Yeah, last year's bill, HB 1431, also included some pretty controversial parts. Notably, it required schools to notify parents about a student's gender expression or identity. Opponents expressed concern that this would force schools to ask for excuse to abusive parents, and Governor Sununu vowed to veto HB 1431, so that really killed it in the House. At that point, it lost support.
Right, but Sununu's still the governor, so why bring this bill back at all?
Some Republicans in the House feel a little betrayed by Sununu on this one. It was a really top priority for them. But this year's bill, HB 10, has some important differences. Notably, the word gender doesn't appear anywhere in the bill text. And legislators can always amend a bill as it moves through the House and Senate, adding something about that in. But it seems that this year's Parent Bill of Rights is written to address Governor Sununu's concerns. He has yet to weigh in.
Generally speaking, bills with very low numbers are top priorities for legislative leaders. So the fact that this bill is numbered HB 10 suggests it's going to be a biggie. Okay, what next?
Let's talk about HB 565. This is a bill that would extend Medicaid coverage for low-income mothers from 60 days postpartum to 12 months postpartum. The first few years of funding for this would come from the federal government. And the language in this bill is almost identical to one from 2022.
There's a quote from last year's House calendar that does a pretty good job of summing up support for the bill. Rep. Joe Shapiro wrote, "This is a common sense and inexpensive remedy for our nation's high rate of preventable pregnancy-related mortality and morbidity."
Republican opponents argued that it would create an incentive for Medicaid recipients to intentionally become pregnant every 12 months, basically always getting coverage. They also expressed concerns about state costs if federal funding cuts out.
I think it'll be interesting to watch how debate over this bill takes place within the larger conversation that's going to happen around Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, so politically wonky listeners may be aware that the original Obamacare Medicaid expansion is set to expire in New Hampshire this year, unless the program is reauthorized by the state legislature. So there are definitely some Republicans who support Medicaid expansion, and I don't think it's nearly as controversial as it was when it first came out, but I'll be ready in case the debate on this one gets spicy.
All right. Next up, let's talk about landfill bans.
This is a throwback podcast episode from 2 years ago. Listeners may remember a bill to ban landfills within 2 miles of state parks. This was in response to a plan to build a landfill near Lake Forest State Park. That landfill is still in the works, and the legislature continues to debate legal challenges that might block it.
Yeah, I remember last year the legislature passed a more refined bill with a formula to calculate the minimum setback for any landfill near a river, lake, or coast. Governor Sununu vetoed that bill last June, arguing that New Hampshire's existing process for siting landfills was adequate and that the state needed more landfill space.
This year, in 2023, legislators are sponsoring 3 bills that are variations on this same theme: HB 56, HB 602, and SB 61. HB 56 is identical to the bill vetoed by Governor Sununu. HB 602 establishes many other requirements for landfill siting, taking into account nearby water supplies, residences, significant wildlife habitats, and so on. SB 61 would more broadly enable the Department of Environmental Services to adopt rules relative to surface water setbacks for landfills without getting too specific in state law. And it remains to be seen if Governor Sununu can be persuaded.
So do any of these bills have public hearings or votes yet?
HB 565, the bill extending Medicaid to 12 months postpartum, has a public hearing February 1st at 1 p.m. SB 61, the bill more broadly enabling the Department of Environmental Services to adopt rule about surface water setbacks and landfills, had a public hearing on January 24th. Any other hearings, voting dates, all yet to come.
Well, if you, listener, are interested in learning about any of these bills or more bills, visit citizenscount.org/bills. You can browse all of the 2023 New Hampshire bills by topic. We do our best to summarize all these bills in easy-to-read terms, and our bill pages now show the latest public hearing dates and locations.
But wait, there's more. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of the state legislature, sign up for our weekly legislative preview. This email newsletter goes out every Friday and highlights our pick of bills with public hearings or votes in the upcoming week. This gives you a chance to contact legislators and share your opinion. If you want to sign up, become a member on the Citizens Count website. It's free. We never share your email address. And then you can get weekly legislative preview emails or a monthly organizational newsletter according to your preferences.
All right, that brings us to our closing segment, Only in New Hampshire.
I brought up the silver coins bill at the beginning of this episode, so now I feel obliged to talk about it.
Yes, I need to hear more about this.
Okay. This bill, HB 245, would require legislators to be paid with 200 silver coins every 2 years instead of $200. Throw out to our name. So according to the bill findings, basically the introductory text that's in the bill, when the New Hampshire Constitution was ratified, the only dollar used as a medium of exchange was the Spanish milled dollar, which contained 1 troy ounce of silver. Therefore, the argument goes, to stick to the original Constitution, each legislator must be paid with 200 troy ounces of silver. The dollar value of silver varies, but we're looking around $4,800 for a 2-year term.
Okay, so basically they just want a pay raise, and then we'd have to name our podcast 100 troy ounces of silver plus mileage. It doesn't have the same ring.
No, it would be more money, but $5,000 isn't a ton of money anyway for a part-time job. Also, speaking of repeat bills, there were similar proposals in 2017 and 2019. I enjoyed the committee report from 2019 in particular. It was just one sentence. While payment in silver coins sound very appealing, there's no practical way this could be implemented.
I mean, obviously, you would just have a giant, pirate treasure chest, maybe with some wheels on the back, and you could just roll your treasure chest, down.
Well, that's part of the concern is okay, we'd have to contract the U.S. Treasury for these very specific silver coins. And then, we'd have to have a state vault somewhere that is storing. So 200 coins times 400 legislators. The math has challenged me, but it's definitely a sort of dragon's hoard situation. Also, someone please make a National Treasure movie about the New Hampshire legislature. I am quite certain there must be secret treasure trove somewhere.
Yes, get Mr. Cage on the phone. All right, that wraps up Season 3 premiere of $100 plus mileage. You can find out more information and episodes at citizenscount.org. We'd also like to thank Franklin Pierce University for producing and the Granite State News Collaborative for hosting. Our theme music is composed by me, Mike Dunbar. Lastly, we thank you for giving us a listen and thinking about how you can be a part of what makes New Hampshire by the people, for the people.